I chain smoke and I say fuck a lot. But I accept myself for the way I am. I accept you too. Viewer discretion advised. Operation Cathedral was a police operation that broke up an international child pornography ring called the Wonderland Club, operating over the internet. They arrested 107 suspects, almost all simultaneously, across 12 countries on September 1st, 1998. One reason for the high profile of the operation was the unusual high number of images involved, possessed and produced and distributed by Wonderland Club. 750,000 images with 1,200 unique identifiable faces. This is all from a documentary from 2001 called Wonderland Club. It's about 45 minutes or so. I'll leave a link. Before we continue, I want to apologize for the shoddy quality. Every now and then it gets a little wobbly, kind of like Dr. Katz, you know. I also want to give an extra warning that if you don't think you can handle it, you might not want to watch this one because it gets a little graphic in detail, like talking. It's not too bad. I've done worse videos, but I just wanted to warn you guys first. So if you think you can handle it, let's take a trip back in time. Oh, come on, hurry up. Damn, how long is this gonna take?
You've got mail.
The faces of 1,000 unknown children, victims of sexual abuse. In a dark underworld of the internet, pedophiles traded these pictures in a club they called Wonderland. Some even preyed on young children to satisfy the demands of their friends.
What made this ring so very different, it was real children. Real active abuse of children on a global scale and the exchange of that material between the members. So it was very, very disturbing.
David Hinds was a member of Wonderland, a loner who had himself been abused as a child. He found it easy to discover child pornography when he first went onto the internet.
The first thing anyone does when they get online is go looking for the porn. It's one of those things. And I found that fairly easily. And within 24 hours I'd found the child porn as well. I didn't expect to find it at first. I thought, well, it's an urban myth. It's just something you hear about on the news. And there it was sitting in front of me.
Within days he was hooked, exploring the hidden depths of the internet. There he met other pedophiles. Thinking they were protected by the anonymity of the net, they traded sexually explicit images of children and talked about them.
I had people I could talk to. I had people that I could trade images with as well. But I had friends. I'd never had so many friends. I had friends all over the world.
In April 1996, a 10-year-old girl, Alison, stayed the night with her friend from school. A few days later, Alison's mother received a phone call. The school friend's father, Ronald Reaver, had been arrested for molesting a child. She called and said, I think you should talk to your daughter to see if she's been a victim. I said, well, okay, I don't think so. You know, I mean, I'll let you know. I don't think so. And I honestly was just in such a scramble at that moment. It was unfathomable to me that there could be anything to it. Ronald Reaver had threatened Alison to stop her telling anyone what had happened. In the days after his arrest, the young girl tried to protect her friend's father. So we brought her in and talked with her, and she just crossed her little arms and said, nope, 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 I'm not a victim. And I said, do you know what molestation is? Do you know what a victim is? Do you know, because at that point I was shooting from just a blank space. I didn't have a clue. because we never think it's our child. But later that day, while other children were preparing for a school trip, Alison shut herself away in her room. I was taking some clothes into her room, and I found her curled up on her bed. And I knew at that moment. And I said to her, I said to myself, I prayed that whatever I do at this point, please let me say the right thing. From the privacy of his home in Greenfield, Ronald Reaver had gone onto the internet to trade child pornography with a group of men in other parts of America. But it went much further when Reaver encouraged his young daughter to have her friends over to stay. One night in the Easter holidays when Alison was staying, Reaver linked up a small camera to his computer. He took the child into the computer room and abused her, online, in front of a dozen men watching in 4 different countries. They typed in requests for Reaver to perform specific sexual acts with the child. To have it revealed that this was in the middle of the slumber party, she had been pulled out of the party and taken into the computer room, and she was molested and violated and raped online as it was being broadcast to Australia and Canada and Finland and places all over the United States, was just devastating to me. And I just sat there with tears just streaming down my face because I was barely beginning to absorb what had happened. Ian Bulldog, a 28-year-old computer technician. In October 1997, his house was raided by Sussex police. They were acting on a tip-off from US Customs, who had found Bulldog's email address on Ronald Reaver's computer in California. Ian Bulldog's machine was examined by the police computer forensics expert.
Stored inside it, I found an absolutely massive library of child pornography. More than 42,000 paedophile images. This was enormous. It was 4 times larger than anything I had ever seen before. What I also discovered was that Ian Bulldog's computer had distributed 1,642 images to 17 other internet users in the 6 days prior to his arrest. This was a distribution on an absolutely massive scale.
For 5 months, Nick Webber probed Bulldog's computer. He discovered evidence of an extensive and sophisticated club of paedophiles with its own committee, rules and vetting procedures. It was called Wonderland. The entry fee was 10,000 original images of child pornography. The club operated out of a secure chat room, a private area of the internet. To get in, the members, known only by screen nicknames, had to pass 7 security checks.
The main purpose of the club was the exchange of paedophile materials, pictures, movies, information, and most appallingly of all, sounds. Terrible, terrible sounds. But while they were exchanging the pictures, they could sit inside this chat room and exchange information.
Talking was great. You'd make friends and you'd say, oh, I found this new picture, this great new picture, and they would say, oh, what's it called? And you'd tell them, and if they had it, they'd say, oh, we've got that one. But if they didn't, then they'd say, oh, send it, we'll have a look.
People don't realise that these images are not just children undressed, romping about on a beach. These images are absolutely hideous on some occasions. The abuse these children have suffered, the worst kind of possible abuse you could imagine.
I have seen images that are the most horrible. Children in nappies being abused, people committing vaginal and anal rape on children as young as 6 and 9 months. These people are serious sexual offenders.
The internet allowed club members to build massive collections of child pornography. But it also enabled them to meet others who reinforced the perverse belief that sex with children is acceptable.
People would message me who I didn't know, I'd never met before, and they would say, trade. And that was it. If you wanted to trade, you would send them some pictures, they would send you some.
Sexually explicit images of children?
Yes.
Illegal images?
Yes.
To most people, to all people indeed, morally wrong?
Well, if that's how you choose to look at it, yes.
Gary Salt turned out to be a key member of the club.
He was very important because he wasn't just a member of Wonderland, he was an abuser in his own right, and he had images of himself abusing children, so he immediately assumed a very high notoriety within the group.
I suppose he was considered a hero. Somebody who was standing up for what the group believed in, who wasn't just mouthing it and saying it, he was actually doing it.
Ian Bulldog had been allowed out on bail with no conditions when his computer was seized. He was living opposite the local school. Bulldog was now working the night shift for a computer company in Oxford. He'd gone right back online into Wonderland and spent hours on the internet. It was the only life he had. For Ian Bulldog and the others, Wonderland became an obsession, a virtual community that brought paedophiles together.
Oh, it's great, the net. It's so fast. Everything's moving. I mean, there's always a software update you need for some of the programs on your computer or something. There's always a new game that you've got from somewhere, or new pictures to trade, or... It's wonderful. It's just, it draws you in, it sucks you in. It's a whole world in itself, and it moves so fast. That's part of the attraction for it for me.
In the club, he was known as Spank Daddy. In reality, he was Gavin Seegers, a 24-year-old computer technician. Seegers had long online conversations with other members. He was supported and encouraged in his paedophile activities by Ian Bulldog.
There was a recorded conversation between him and Seegers, where Seegers is discussing going down to a local swimming pool, and in effect, the touching up of 11-year-old girls in swimsuits. And Bulldog is obviously very pleased about this from the conversation that they've been having, and he encourages Seegers to continue and asks if he can get more information about this particular potential abuse.
As they watched Seegers online, the police became more and more concerned.
Gavin Seegers was fantasizing about the abduction, the rape, the torture, and the killing of children.
In May 1998, the police tailed Gavin Seegers to a hut in Dartford. It turned out to be the local Sea Cadets headquarters. Seegers was a volunteer youth leader in contact with 25 boys and girls between 10 and 18. What Gary Salt had done to children in Stockport proved that some members of Wonderland would abuse children to enhance their status within the club. 3 Wonderland members actually travelled to Stockport to meet children whom Salt had abused. One of them, Anthony Skinner, emailed snapshots round the world as a memento of his visit to Salt's house.
Some of them travelled to his home address and were pictured sitting on his bed with the children, not in indecent poses, but just so that they could get a buzz out of saying they've met the stars of the movie. That's the sort of mentality of the people we're dealing with.
People were actively abusing children and producing pictures for others in the club, people like you.
That's not true. They weren't producing them for others.
But children were being abused to provide images.
There were some children... We just didn't see it as abuse. We saw it as there were some children involved in relationships.
He was living in a trailer park alongside several families and working in a nearby store. Online he traded child porn with other members, including his own father. His nickname was Bart, but his real name was Scott Allemeyer.
He was a very popular, very well-respected guy. He was a producer. He was actually abusing kids, videotaping it, taking pictures, and sharing that pictures with everybody else in the channel. That gave somebody great status. So he was definitely one of the few people, the tier 1, top shelf people. He was very much revered by everybody in the channel. And you can even see when he comes into the channel, people acknowledge him right away. Everybody is sure to say hi to him. Hey Bart, how's it going? What's new? Good to see you.
And that's because Bart had something special to offer.
He had something special to offer. Actionable, actionable pictures, new producer, actionable material. He would basically produce stuff on demand. If you want a special request, you would talk to him about certain things that you wanted to see him do. The next time he's abusing a child, he would do it for you.
William Rosa seemed a respectable citizen, a 31-year-old medical student at Chapel Hill College in North Carolina. His training as a doctor included a stint in the children's unit at the hospital, but Rosa was also a member of Wonderland.
He could be my general practitioner. He could be my family's GP. I could be sending my boys to him. Or my neighbor could be sending their daughters to him. That concerned me. He has access to the whole family as a physician.
So what was your reaction?
Grief, more than anything. I was grieving for my friends. I didn't know what would happen. I knew that some of them wouldn't be able to accept it, and I have found out since that 6 of them have committed suicide.
In America, it was still the middle of the night when Scott Allemeyer's trailer home was raided. Weapons and explosives were found. Child protection officers discovered a homemade video of the abuse of an 8-year-old girl. Allemeyer's trailer resembled a prison.
He had an inner sanctum that he had built up with plywood, and a lot of the doors were maybe 4 inches thick. We found a young girl's panties that he had put in plastic bags and had hid down in the ductwork. He also had some of these panties laying near the computer where he would sit at and work.
This is an internet news group browsing program. It allows you to access up to 46,000 different news groups. Here you can see in the news groups we've got a news group called Alt Sex Paedophile, Alt Sex Paedophilia, Alt Sex Paedophilia boys, girls.
So it's clearly marked paedophilia?
It's clearly marked paedophilia, and a simple click of the mouse will take you straight into it and the contents of that particular news group.
And what's the likelihood of those contents being, in effect, illegal? Images of children being abused?
A large proportion of it will be images that are illegal to be in possession of in this country.
And that's openly available on the internet?
Openly available and clearly marked as such.
Why do some of your members carry news groups that are obviously to do with paedophilia, sex.babies? It's obvious what it contains. How can you say you're serious about stopping child porn on the net when this kind of material exists openly by your members?
I think it's important to recognise that the actual names of news groups do not actually bear always a correspondence with what they actually contain. And if we took the action of banning all different news groups because of a name, then we might not actually be banning information that was actually...
But it would be a start, would it not, to stop news groups that are actually called sex.babies?
Many of them are stopped.
But many of them aren't. I mean, one of your members, for example, has a dozen of these sites specifically: sex.babies, sex.boys, sex.children, pictures.child erotica. What else are those news groups about, if not illegal material?
Well, as I said, the news groups themselves, the names, actually don't necessarily indicate what's in them. And
but some of the paedophiles that we've spoken to say that they got into this whole business and got into the net because they identified those news groups and went in that way because they found a news group called, for example, pictures.child.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny that these news groups do exist, and some of them do contain illegal material.
But the idea that children could possibly want sex is totally abhorrent to everybody.
Not to us.
What? Fucking stoned.